snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys! So I am here today to do a tag video, and I was tagged in this tag video by the creator, who is Stranger in Books. I will put a link to her channel down below for you guys to go and check her out. This is a really interesting tag. I don't usually find tags that interesting. Sometimes they get a little bit repetitive or annoying. So even though I've been tagged in a couple of tags and I'm going to be doing a few of them today, this one's definitely my favourite because it actually forced me to do a bit of research and figure things out a little bit for quite a while before I filmed this. So I had to plan this video out a bit to really get all my facts straight and things like that. So this is the Influential Women book tag, and I'm very excited. So generally the idea of this tag is that all you've got to do is list 10 influential women throughout past of history or present day. It's totally up to you. And then you've got to relate them to a female character from a book. Let's get started. I'm going to start with the youngest female first and then work my way back through the past and history. So yeah, the first one I'm going to say is Emma Watson. I'm sure that loads of you guys have heard of Emma Watson. She is a very big name. She was in Harry Potter as Hermione in the films, and she was awesome as an actress, but now she has developed on in her life and she went back to university, got an English degree after all the Harry Potter films were done. She was then also picked to be the UN Woman Goodwill Ambassador. I think she's the youngest one, or one of the youngest ones they've ever had, and she's really, really active and vocal about trying to get women and men equal rights. And she launched the He for She campaign for the UN, and it was just a really, really emotional and incredible speech that she gave. So if you've not seen that speech, I will put a link to that in the description below for you guys to check out, because it's definitely 100% worth watching. But she was very, very inspiring and very, very passionate, and I think she's worked hard for everything in her life, and you can really see that. She's definitely a very determined person. So the book character that I'm going to relate her to is Alexia Tarabotti from the Parasol Protectorate series, which is by Gail Carriger. I think Alexia is very, very determined as well. She has faced adversity in her life, and she's definitely had moments where people have misjudged her or not really expected a lot from her, but actually she goes on to do really great things, and she definitely knows what she believes in and she fights for what she believes in, and she's happy to be vocal about what she believes in and what she thinks is fine. And I really admire that about her as a character, but I also really admire that about Emma Watson. So both of them have a kind of kinship there, and I think that they would be a great pairing. The next woman I'm going to mention is Taylor Swift. She's one of the youngest women to ever become famous through singing and through determination and actually going to the recording companies and getting picked that way, as opposed to a sort of reality TV show, which is the way a lot of people are being picked recently. She was the youngest ever Album of the Year winner in the Grammy Awards, and she's the only person who's ever had 3 records sold over 1 million copies in the first week, so that's a pretty amazing achievement. She is also constantly advocating for women, and she's very vocal about that, but equally she's also very appreciative of her fans, and she's really great at interacting with fans and giving them a personal one-on-one experience and being really upfront and fair with her fans, and she really shows her appreciation of them really well. I also love the fact that she's not afraid of change, and she's quite happy to change her image. If she wants to, she will do that, and she won't let anyone hold her back from what she believes in, so I really enjoy that about her. I'm going to relate her to Lyra from His Dark Materials. Lyra is a great character. She's actually a young child in the book, so she's not as old as Taylor Swift, but she, right from when she's a young child, she is actually very, very determined, much like Taylor Swift, and she's just a fighter through and through. She has a lot of stuff that she has to kind of deal with, and her friends and the people that she knows in the story really help her through that, as Taylor Swift is helped by her fans every day, and she appreciates her fans. Lyra appreciates her friends in the story, and they're a big part of who she is and what she is and the way that she evolves over the course of the book. Then I have a lady who I'd never heard of her before, but my grandma told me about her when I was researching for this tag, and that is Ongseng Tsuki. She's one of the world's most prominent political prisoners. She received the Rafto Prize for Freedom of Thought in 1990, and she was a campaigner for a democratic government and gave lots of speeches. She was very motivated by non-violent approaches. She never wanted to include violence in the way that she campaigned about things. But despite that, she was actually arrested and kept under house arrest for 15 years which is a very, very long time. And even though she was offered her freedom if she left the country, she refused to leave the country. She still believed in what she believed in, and she wanted to stick it out to the end. She has been freed today. She is now free, but I just think her dedication is really, really admirable, and she's very, very much for the people. She wants to get what the people want and believe in. The book character that I would relate Ongseng Tsuki to is Jez from the Ketty J series. Jez is a woman who is in a man's world, much like Ongseng Tsuki, and she has to deal with the crew who are all males besides her, and she deals with that in a really, really great way. She never gets violent or aggressive. She also has a lot of struggles with violence in the story. She is trying to repress her violent side, and she has a lot of inner turmoil over whether or not to use violence to solving problems, and I thought that that was an interesting parallel between the two of them, because even though Ongseng Tsuki didn't use violence, there's always a temptation to rise to that violence, and 15 years of house arrest is pretty bad. I mean, I don't think anyone I know would really enjoy that. Jez is a believer in being a part of the crew and taking on her share of responsibility so that the crew as a whole can prosper, and I think that's very much what Ongseng Tsuki is about as well. She believes in a democratic government, and she believes in fairness and equality and doing what the people want them to do. And Jez is very much like that for her crew, so I think they have some interesting parallels, and that's a great series, so you guys should read that. Next I have J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling, as I'm sure many of you guys know, is the author of the Harry Potter series, which is an amazing and incredible series, but it did take J.K. Rowling quite a while for her to get published, as it does many authors. She had a great idea, she had a great concept, but it still took her a very long time to get it published, and she fought and she worked hard to get to the point where she is now incredibly rich and famous and influential, but she wasn't always. She used to be a fairly average lady who just liked books and liked reading and writing. So the person that I'm going to relate her to in book form is Thursday Next from the Thursday Next series by Jasper Fforde. Thursday is a sort of crime detective, but she lives in a world which is very literary oriented, and there is actually the possibility for literary characters to come to life in this world, which I thought was really, really interesting. And Thursday Next has a strong passion for various books, and she gets involved in these plots to do with book characters coming to life, and I just feel like her passion for books is definitely something that she and J.K. Rowling share, because the two of them together both have such a strong passion for reading and writing and stories in general, and I really, really enjoyed that. So yeah, she was an interesting character. I've not carried on with that series yet, but I definitely think I should at some point, because I've only read the first book. But it was a decent read, and I definitely loved the ideas within it, so I think I should probably carry on at some point. Next, I have Karen Brady. Karen Brady, many of you guys in the UK might know, because she is on The Apprentice. She is like Lord Sugar's second in command, but she is a very, very successful businesswoman in her own right, and I really appreciate her determination. Again, she is a female who's had to struggle to where she is today, and today she is one of the most sought after speakers. She's also recently been made into a baroness, which is a pretty high achievement, and the character that I'm going to relate her to is Gwen from the Rieria Revelations and Rieria Chronicles, because Gwen is a fighter. She is a real hard fighter, and she works hard for where she gets in the story. She didn't always have a good life. I don't know if Karen Brady did or not, but Gwen didn't, and she really had to work hard to get to the point where she is today and be respected and be living her dreams and living her passions, and I really admire her as a character. She is one of the best characters I've ever encountered in terms of a female in fantasy, because it's very difficult in fantasy to find good female characters. I worked this out as I was trying to figure out who to say for this tag, so it was difficult. But Gwen is an incredible character. I believe Michael J. Sullivan based her off of his wife, which is definitely easy to see, because she is such a fleshed out and well developed character, and I really, really enjoy her within the story and seeing the struggles and the way that she overcomes everything, because she has a lot to deal with in the books. Next I have Princess Diana. Princess Diana obviously was formerly married to Charles, Prince of Wales. The reason I've included her on this list is because of the charity work that she did and the philanthropy that she was involved in. She was a political figure, or a royal figure I suppose, who was really, really good at promoting charity and getting people involved and raising awareness of various issues that were really not dealt with enough until she came along. For example, she was hugely involved in the raising awareness of AIDS and helping AIDS survivors, and also raising awareness about landmines and helping the survivors of landmines and soldiers and the clearing of landmines as well. So those are two really, really important issues that she was a massive figurehead for, and she was definitely one of the most prominent people at the time who was raising awareness for these. So I really, really admired that about her. And I'm going to relate her to Vin from the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. Vin is very much a powerful figure. As she goes through the book, she becomes more and more powerful and she comes into her own status, which really helps her to then go on and make things better in the world for the people below her, which is very much something that Princess Diana did. I believe that Vin is a great character. She's really fleshed out and really enjoyable to read about, but also she raises awareness about the slavery of the Scar, who are the people in the world where she lives, who are suppressed and they're not being allowed to express their freedom or anything like that. She really helps them over the course of the book, and she does things for them and for the people like them to prosper in the future. So I really enjoyed seeing that about her. Next I have Zaha Hadid, who is an architect. She was the first ever female architect to receive the Pritzker Architecture Prize, and she definitely had to work her way up to that. Now she's a very, very successful architect who actually designed the aquatic stadium at the London 2012 Olympics, if you guys have seen that. And she's very successful by today's standards, but it took her a long time to get there, and now she has a whole team of people that she commands. The person I'm going to relate her to from a book is Shallon, who is from Stormlight Archive, again by Brandon Sanderson. Shallon is a really, really creative person, and she uses her creativity and her passion to help her within the story and help her to creatively develop ideas. And I think that their creativity between the two of them is really interesting, and they definitely have a shared kinship there, because of how creative they are and the creative hobbies that they've used to turn into their passions and to turn into a vital part of their stories and lives. Next I have Anne Frank. Anne Frank, as many of you guys will know, was a young girl who was living in the Second World War. She was a Jew and she was in hiding for a very large amount of her life. She was really, really young, and she kept a diary the whole time that she was in hiding. And that diary was published after she died, and most of her family died in various different concentration camps, because her father, who was the only remaining survivor of her family, actually found her diary, and he read through it and he saw how mature she was and how well she had articulated the feelings and the horror of the situation that they were in, and he felt that it had to be published. He couldn't let it not be published. As soon as it was published, it was one of the most well-received, highly acclaimed books ever, and it's still a really, really fantastic source of describing how it was to live in the Second World War if you were a Jew. So I'm not going to relate her to a book character because she has her own book, which is The Diary of Anne Frank, and I think that you guys should read that. It is emotional and heartbreaking all at once. There's some really sad stuff and some happy moments as well, but it's mostly really devastating, and especially knowing how she died and how everything ended for her. It's a really, really sad and emotional book. So I would highly, highly recommend that you guys go and check that out if you've never read it before, because it's amazing. It was really, really heartfelt and sad, and yeah, it's such a good book, so you should definitely read that. Next I have Rosa Parks, who was a young black woman who was sitting on the bus in segregated America, and she refused to give up her seat in the black section of the bus for a white person when the white section was full up. She refused to give up her seat, and that caused her to go into this long process of a court trial and all sorts of things like that. She wasn't the first person to refuse giving up a seat or something like that, but she was the first person. It became a big deal, and she fought her case through to the end, and she became a massive part of the civil rights movement and a massive inspiration for people in the civil rights movement. So I think she's definitely admirable for that one small action that she took in a peaceful way, but actually she inspired a lot of people. And she was very subtle about how she went about it, but actually in the end she really helped a huge amount of people, which is amazing. The character I'm going to relate her to is Ivy Hisselpenny from the Parasol Protectorate series, because Ivy Hisselpenny is the sort of person who hates violence. She can't be around violence at all. She's very faint of heart, which I don't think Rosa Parks was, but that's Ivy Hisselpenny. And the thing that they do share is that Ivy Hisselpenny does things that people don't expect of her, and that's something that Rosa Parks did. She did something that people wouldn't have expected. It wasn't conventional, it was definitely dangerous for her to do, but she did it anyway because it was something she believed in, and she was doing it for the betterment of her people, and that's something that Ivy does a lot in the story as well. Ivy always helps out her friends, and she tries to do that in the most peaceful and fun way possible, and she doesn't want to hurt anyone. She never wants there to be violence or aggression between anyone, but she's actually a really, really fantastic character. You just got to get to know her, and I really love her in the series. And then the final one that I'm going to mention is Marie Curie, who was a scientist, and she worked a lot in chemistry. She did a lot of study into radioactivity. She was the first woman ever to win the Nobel Prize, and she's the only person to ever win it twice. She worked out a theory of radioactivity, and she also discovered how to isolate radioactive isotopes and discovered polonium and radium. Eventually she ended up dying from cancer, which can quite possibly be accredited to the work that she did. And she was very, very dedicated through everything to her work and to what she believed in and discovering things for the betterment of the human race as a whole. So the book character that I'm going to relate her to is Yukiko from the Lotus War series by J. Kristoff. Yukiko is the main character of the series. She starts off quite small, but she actually grows into a really massive deal and a massive part of the story. She follows her dreams and she follows her passions. She tries her best to help the world that she is a part of. She explores various different avenues within the story. She does a lot of experimentation of where she can go, what she can do, how she can get help for their situation. And I think she definitely tries not to resort to the drastic measures, but in the end she is willing to die for her friends and her family if she needs to. And I think that's something that Marie Curie and she have in common. So generally, really awesome, badass character. So that is my influential women book tag. I would love to see you guys do this tag. I think it's a really thought-provoking tag. I think I had to do a bit of research into some of these women and find out a little bit more about women I really truly did get influenced by or inspired by, and I thought that was a really interesting thing to have to sit down and do and consider, and I really enjoyed doing it. And then relating it to book characters was difficult because female book characters in fantasy are not often that great. So unfortunately that is a well-known thing, that they're not always very good, and therefore it was difficult to come up with people who not only were female but also female that I would find inspirational and also related to the women I was talking about. So pretty difficult tag for me. If you don't read fantasy, it might be an easier one. So I'm going to tag Mercedes from Mercy's Bookish Musing. I'm also going to tag Sana from Inkbones Books, and Chris and Victoria from Christoria 2027, and anyone else who wants to do it. So if you do this tag, or if you have some influential women that you want to list below, or women in fantasy that you want to list below that you really admire, then definitely do so, because I'd love to read those comments and I'd love to watch your videos if you end up doing the tag. Thank you all for watching, let me know your thoughts, and I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little chat.